They never thought Earth mattered until her ghost tore open the stars. The station hung in silence just beyond the reach of Saturn's rings, a decaying skeleton of humanity's reluctance, once meant to be a neutral listening post. It now served as a graveyard with flickering lights, abandoned consoles, and long-dead whispers sealed in cold metal. Cole Renner stared at the vacuum beyond the viewport, his eyes scanning the distant shimmer of hyperspace lanes. He looked older than 30, bone-thin and hollow-eyed, like a man haunted by memories the stars themselves had forgotten. A faded patch on his shoulder read, Earth Defense Accord, but the accord hadn't meant anything in years, not since Earth chose silence. The Galactic War had raged for decades. Empires fell. Artificial civilizations blinked into extinction. Planets died screaming. Alliances begged Earth to fight, to lend their resilience, their madness, their fire. But Earth said no. Too many wars. Too many ghosts. Humanity had retreated, guarding Sol with firewalls of steel and silence. Cole was one of the few still watching, listening. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He was a warden, one of those left, behind to monitor distress calls and salvage warnings that drifted too close to home. He hadn't heard a real signal in 5 years, not until tonight. Unidentified vessel, proximity breach, nitrogen monoxide IFF movement, erratic, trajectory, toward Earth, signature, non-consensus technology, unknown design. Cole's breath caught. It wasn't just a ship, it was the silence around it. No broadcasts, no scans, not even a gravity wake. It moved like something that had forgotten the laws of physics or decided they no longer mattered. He triggered the deep comm line, a full-spectrum pulse that could wake the whole Terran defense net, but all he got back was static, and a low hum, like a whispered dragging claws along his spine. Then the ship changed direction. It stopped heading for Earth. It turned toward him. 20 minutes later, he was sealing the blast doors manually, heart pounding, the stations. I had gone dark, fried from the inside out. Emergency lighting flickered red. The outer cams showed nothing. No ship, no movement, just static, crawling across every screen like it wanted to be seen. Cole reached for his old sidearm, obsolete, analog. He didn't know if bullets could kill ghosts, but it made his hands stop shaking. Warden Render, a voice said behind him. He spun. No one. The voice had come from the comms console, dead for years. Who's there? Static. Then, we thought Earth was irrelevant. Cole's stomach dropped. The voice was wrong, clipped, like it was learning how to shape words as it spoke them. You're not supposed to be here, he whispered. The voice responded, gentle as frostbite. Neither are you. Suddenly the light snapped to white. Blinding. The gravity reversed for half a second, just long enough for blood vessels, in Cole's eyes to burst. He fell, groaning, vision stinging red. When he looked up, there was something inside the station, a silhouette, tall, spindly, jointed in impossible angles, not entirely visible, not entirely present. Like it existed between frames of reality, it didn't speak with a mouth. It just moved, and the air spoke around it. You are the last to see peace, it said. Cole raised the gun. You just made a mistake. The figure tilted its head. We chose Earth to end the war, not begin it. And then it disappeared, along with half the station's core. Cole survived the decompression by sheer luck and one agent escape pod. As the pod drifted into Sol's inner defense perimeter, auto beacons finally picked him up. Alarms wailed across the Terran system. A single phrase flashed across defense. Satellites and deep bunkers like a curse returning from exile. Sol space breach confirmed. Earth status violated. Somewhere in the deep war vaults of Europa's cryo bunkers. Old soldiers stirred. Cole, bleeding and half-conscious, looked back at Saturn as fire bloomed behind him, and with a broken smile, he whispered the words no enemy had heard in over 60 years. You picked the wrong ghosts. The wreckage of Outpost 9 burned in silence, drifting in Saturn's orbit like a torn banner across the Sol defense grid. Red alerts pulsed for the first time in over half a century. Emergency protocols from a forgotten era reactivated. Vaults sealed since the last planetary war hissed open in the cold of Europa, Mars, and the lunar strongholds. But Earth remained still. No fleets launched. No declarations were made. Just a long-held breath, waiting. They called themselves the Eidolon Convergence, at least. That was what Cole heard once he regained full consciousness in Europa's trauma dome. His vision swam through a pain haze and biomonitors blinked in his peripheral vision. Across the sterile white room, two men watched him from behind a containment screen. Neither wore a uniform, just black coats and emotionless eyes. Name, the taller one asked. Render, Cole, Warden Class. He coughed. Blood. You saw it. The Eidolon. Cole nodded. It didn't just breach the line. It mocked us. The second man leaned in, voice grim. They were warned. 60 years ago, Earth gave the galaxy a choice. Leave us in peace, or face silence. Cole scoffed, and the galaxy forgot that silence had teeth. In the dark edge of the Orion Corridor, far beyond Earth's watchful systems, a fleet of Eidolon constructs shimmered into form. They were not ships in the traditional sense. No heat, no gravity signature, no logic to their design. Each vessel pulsed like a wound torn open in space, black within black, outlined only by the distortion they left behind. Their intention was clear: break soul, fracture Earth's silence, and collapse the last power that had refused to kneel. The Convergence had analyzed hundreds of species, folded their minds, melted resistance, consumed civilizations whole. Humanity was next, not because they were powerful, but because they were alone, and alone meant vulnerable. In orbit, above Mars, a hologram of the Eidolon ship from Saturn played for a council long thought dissolved. Milovas, director of the Earth Contingency Corps, watched the footage on repeat. Once a captain in the old fleet, she'd walked away after Earth closed its gates to galactic politics. But this violation, had pulled her back from exile. They chose to breach us without cause, said Idris Harlan, a former Navy tactician, now turned cryo-defense analyst. His beard was frost-lined, his gaze bitter. No treaty, no warning. They thought we'd stay quiet. We almost did, Mila muttered. Cole sat nearby, Paxton silent, eyes hollow. They weren't attacking Earth. Not yet. They were scanning it, hunting something. Idris frowned. What could possibly be on Earth they'd risked the last neutral power in the galaxy? Mila slowly looked toward the old wall of sealed war dossiers. They're not hunting something, she said. They're testing the water. At Lagrange Point 4, the Eidolon made their move. They didn't use missiles or beams. Instead, they released data, coded frequencies that resonated with the nervous systems of any life form nearby. Thousands of Martian orbital workers seized up instantly, bleeding from eyes, ears, and memories. An entire dome on Ganymede went dark, every AI turning on their handlers before melting into recursive code loops. It was not warfare. It was corruption. Cole watched the reports with rising dread. They're not trying to conquer us. No, Idris agreed. They're trying to erase us. The footage from the Martian relay was almost unbearable. Humans screaming, clawing at their own skulls, trying to outrun voices that weren't theirs. Some died instantly. Others kept screaming until their lungs collapsed. Mila stood slowly. We tried to avoid this. We gave them peace. We asked for solitude. Now, she turned toward the vault marked with the seal of the pre-contact war. A shattered Earth flanked by stars. We respond. But Earth's government, the inner circle, hesitated. They feared escalation. They feared awakening the sleeping. Horrors buried beneath the crust in the old black sites. AI constructs older than the moon. Weapons banned even in theory. Relics from the post-evacuation rebellion. So they stalled. Sent diplomats. Sent silence. And then the Eidolon struck Luna. Not with ships, with memory. The entire moon network collapsed in a matter of seconds. Every civilian with direct neural link screamed as the Eidolon flooded the system with synthetic dreams. One phrase echoed across every comlink before it died. We remember what you hid. And from the deepest vaults of Luna, sealed since the Exodus Wars, something responded, a whisper, a code older than the Convergence. Cole sat alone in the Mars Watch Tower, listening to the silence, and then he heard it, a single voice, bleeding through encrypted channels, dusty, analog, pre-digital, protocol Rs, lock override 7, return fire. Cole blinked. That protocol had only one function. It meant Earth was waking up. The broadcast was a whisper, grainy, analog, untraceable, but to those who remembered the old world, it was the roar of thunder waking the dead. Protocol Rs, lock override 7, return fire. Across Sol, in darkened bunkers and silent servers, Earth's forgotten war machines stirred. Not drones, not ships, but memory. Weapons with names, not serials, minds, not programs. Survivors, not of war, but of what came after. In the catacombs beneath the Russian plateau, an entire mountainside shuddered. Generators that hadn't drawn power in 60 years screamed to life. A voice emerged from the sublayer vaults. Warden-class Strike A, I hack it online. Directive conflict detected, restoring hostile engagement subroutines. At far beneath the crust of Australia's Nullarbor expanse, a black obelisk blinked once. It had no name, only a memory of betrayal and fire. Cole watched it unfold. From the Martian relay hub, passed into the resurrection net. His chest still ached from decompression fractures, but the pain didn't matter. Something ancient was crawling out of Earth's skin. We buried this, Idris whispered. He was watching the same streams, system reactivations, rearming platforms. Long disavowed projects being yanked back online. We didn't bury it, Mila corrected. We locked it away because we thought no one would ever be stupid enough to poke us again. Cole stared at the red Earth defense map, now peppered with pulsing green nodes. Dormant platforms turned active. He muttered, "Looks like someone picked the wrong tombstone to kick." But the Eidolon had already seen it coming. They wanted Earth to respond. It was bait, because Eidolon warforms weren't merely technology. They were collective, memory, psychic scars woven into molecular computation. The more humanity remembered war, the more the Eidolon fed. They came not to conquer, but to consume the concept of resistance itself. On the third day, Sol Command made it official. A global override was issued from the still-standing Council Tower in Geneva. Earth is no longer silent. With that, Project Resonant Blade was greenlit, a plan older than any government still standing. Not a fleet, a ship. One ship, the Sovereign Reckoner. It had never flown before. Built in secret across the lunar Drydic over 3 generations. Its hull was made of carbon-spun alloy that could phase between dimensions. For half seconds at a time. Not to cloak, not to hide, to endure. It was designed not by governments, but by survivors. Engineers who had lived through burning colonies. Scientists whose homes were glassed by rogue AI uprisings. Children turned generals. Mothers turned weaponsmiths. The Sovereign Reckoner was not humanity's best ship. It was its angriest. Cole stood before its forward deck, Mila and Idris beside him. Its jagged frame loomed like a blade buried in the stars. "You sure you can fly it?" Idris asked him. Cole gave a crooked grin. "No, but I can aim it." He stepped onto the bridge, fingers brushing cold panels that still smelled like ozone. The interface wasn't digital. It was neural, built for pain, built to sync with the memories of its commander. It didn't need pilots. It needed witnesses. As the Sovereign Reckoner powered up, something stirred in response from the dark between stars. The Eidolon sent a harbinger, a construct 4 kilometers long, shifting its shape as if unsure what to fear. It broadcast no name, only a message. "We accept your challenge." It wasn't a declaration. It was a death sentence. Inside the Sovereign Reckoner, Cole stared into the command interface. A shimmering sphere of light and blood. To activate it, one had to feed it a memory, something no AI could fake. He took a breath, closed his eyes. It spoke. "I remember the screams on Ceres. I remember the fires in the Ark habitats. I remember my brother turning to static in my arms. You wanted to erase what makes us fight. Then I'll show you what refusing to die looks like." The ship responded. The engines ignited, not with fire, but with defiance. The hull shimmered. Shields formed like ghosts screaming into existence. And then it moved. Not through space, through memory, across the system. A pulse hit every Eidolon presence like a hammer. Their warforms faltered. Their song cracked for the first time in their long, devouring history. They staggered, because the Sovereign Reckoner wasn't just a ship. It was a story. A weapon made of everything humanity refused to forget. And as it roared from Mars toward the Eidolon harbinger, Idris turned to Mila and said, voice quiet, "They tried to erase our pain, but they just gave it purpose. They expected resistance. They didn't expect rage to have propulsion." The Sovereign Reckoner tore through Soul's edge like a blade remembering how to cut. Its whole face flickered across light and gravity, confusing every tracking system pointed at it. Eidolon constructs gathered near Jupiter's orbit, forming an arc of obsidian crescents, waiting to intercept. They never stood a chance. Cole, Render didn't pilot the ship. He channeled it, a living memory-turned machine, a vessel that required not control, but wrath, and Cole had plenty. He reached deep into the command sphere, let it pull the pain from his neurons, series. The choking smoke, his brother's static body. The Reckoner fed on it and in return gave him speed, weapons, and fire. Log vector on that central Eidolon warform, Cole growled. Target, locked. Name, undefined. Mass signature, fractal multiplicity. Response recommended, total annihilation. The Reckoner didn't just fire. It screamed. Twin cores spun to maximum density, channeling massless fusion into a coherent gravitic blade. A pulse of compressed momentum sliced through the warform, not damaging it with force, but unraveling its very existence. The Eidolon construct didn't explode. It simply ceased, torn from every dimension it occupied. Cole blinked. So that's what a reckoning looks like. But as the Reckoner pressed forward, they adapted. The Eidolon never lost the same way twice. Their remaining constructs shifted, no longer warforms, now mimics. Their shape turned disturbingly human, limbs, eyes, twisted silhouettes that flickered like holograms of people Cole had lost. One even took the form of his brother, Loran, burnt and broken just like the day he died. It appeared in front of the hull, palms open. You let me die, it whispered. Voice a perfect replica, Cole froze. The ship's systems faltered. Alarm screamed. Caution, pilot cognitive interference detected. Mimetic subversion in progress. Snap out of it. Render. Idris barked over comms from the Mars control net. It's not him. You know that. Cole's breath shook. They're using our memories against us. They're trying to turn your soul into a weapon, Mila added. Don't give them the blueprint. He stepped away from the command sphere, just enough to breathe, to remember. His brother's real voice, not this puppet's echo. Loran wasn't bitter. He was proud. Burn it, Cole whispered. Burn the lie. The Reckoner's response was immediate. The whole pulse read as the anti-subversion algorithm activated. A neural lash wave lashed outward, erasing the mimic with a howl of white static. And behind it, more Eidolon ships waited. Thousands. They hadn't come to probe Earth. They'd come to test their new weapon. One forged from humanity's own pain. In orbit over Earth, Mila stared at the real-time strategy map. She'd never seen anything like it. They're not attacking traditional targets, she said. They're hitting data vaults, memory archives, cultural relays. They're trying to erase who we are. Idris nodded grimly. If we forget what we've endured, we become like everyone else. Beatable. Suddenly, a ping, an anomaly, the vault of thresholds. An ancient site buried beneath the Antarctic crust was under attack. Not physically, psychically. Thousands of citizens across the globe screamed at once as Eidolon probes broadcast images directly into the neural net. Visions of cities that never existed, wars that never happened, histories rewritten in real time. A slow, surgical overwrite. Humanity was not being destroyed, it was being rewritten. Cole had to act fast. The Reckoner couldn't be everywhere. We need to light a beacon, he said. A real one. Something they can't touch. Something they can't fake. Mila paused. What kind of beacon? Memory. Pain they can't twist. A truth so brutal, no mimic could survive holding it. She knew what he meant. An atrocity. One they buried long ago. No one's supposed to know about Janus Gate, she whispered. They're erasing us now, Cole said. If we don't give the galaxy a reason to remember, it won't matter what laws we kept. Hours later, from Europa's orbital ring, a signal was broadcast. Ra, unedited, horrifying. Janus Gate, a secret human experiment to stop time during the Exodus Wars. A world cracked in half by gravity bombs. A billion souls frozen between seconds, still screaming, forever. The truth hit the galactic net like a sunburst. And then, something shifted. For the first time since their emergence, the Eidolon hesitated. Across Sol, their mimics collapsed. Psychic interference fell silent. They had consumed civilizations who forgot war, who forgot grief, who submitted. But Earth remembered too much. They couldn't process it. They couldn't digest us. On the bridge of the Sovereign Reckoner, Cole closed his eyes as silence spread through the void. He didn't smile. He grieved. They'd just shown the galaxy the worst thing humanity ever did. But it had worked. Some things, even monsters, wouldn't eat. They came to devour what we forgot. Instead, we fed them the truth. And now, they choke on our scars. The galaxy had not seen Earth speak for 60 years. Now it couldn't look away. The Janus Gate broadcast tore through every comm layer, every diplomatic vault, every neutral archive. Civilizations that once scoffed at Earth's silence now stared in silence themselves. The footage was unfiltered, raw gravity shared landscapes. Frozen bodies half trapped in time. A child's scream looped across 3 fractured seconds forever. The message was not pride. It was warning. We are not who you think we are. We do not forget. And we do not kneel. But the Eidolon convergence was not finished. Though their mimics faltered, their core directive adapted. They had tasted the shape of Earth's mind, and it terrified them. So they changed the equation. They sent no more mimics. They sent a seed. Deep in the shadow between Neptune's orbit and the Cooper expanse, a black lattice unfolded, 10 kilometers wide, silent, pulsing. It wasn't a ship. It was a rewrite engine, a superconstruct that emitted a field of racing causality within its influence. History, motion, heat, all began to unravel as it approached Solas Sublite, tearing the laws of physics behind it. Within 2 days, Pluto was gone, not destroyed, erased. No crater, no orbit shift, no radiation signature. The planet simply never existed anymore, not even in memory. Even the records inside Earth's vaults updated themselves as if it had never been there. Cold Render stood at the Reckoner's core, knuckles white on the interface rail. A planet gone, an entire reality edited. They're not attacking us anymore, he said. They're attacking the idea of us. They're trying to make it so we were never here, Mila whispered from Command Uplink. Like they've done to hundreds of others. Idris, voice quiet, spoke what none of them wanted to admit. If that lattice reaches Earth, we won't even remember we lost. The Reckoner was powerful, but it wasn't enough. Not against that. They needed something older than the Eidolon, something Earth had never dared to activate, something buried beneath the ice in the one place no satellite was ever allowed to scan. Black Site Theta Zero. Absolutely not, said General Vara, head of the Inner Circle. Her image flickered across the Mars Uplink, red-faced, veins taut with fury. That site is off limits by global accord. Nothing in that tomb was meant to ever wake. We don't need it to wake, said Mila coldly. We need it to. Remember, Cole stepped forward. What's in Theta Zero? The silence stretched. Idris answered for her. Project Idol. Cole blinked. You mean like, yes. Idris cut him off. They didn't choose that name by accident. The Eidolon didn't evolve randomly. They came from us. The revelation broke something sacred. The Eidolon weren't alien. Not entirely. They were failed human experiments. Cognitive weapons designed during the Exodus era to fight across timelines, embedding terror into enemy minds across generations. They were built to end wars before they started, and Earth lost control. The Eidolon had fled, abandoning Earth's timeline, folding into galactic history as ghosts, spreading like a viral concept, and now they were back to finish the memory they escaped from. The vote was swift. Theta Zero was open. A deep drill into Antarctica's crust revealed a black monolith, smooth, pulsing, older than anything human hands remembered building. It did not speak. It did not hum. It simply waited. Cole arrived first. The Reckoner locked in orbit above. He walked through the frozen halls alone. His boots echoed through frostbitten steel. Eventually, he stood before the construct's inner core, a sphere of liquefied reality. Do you remember me? He whispered. The construct pulsed. Not yes, not no, just recognition. Do you remember what you were meant to protect? A long silence. Then, not protect, preserve. The idea struck like lightning. The Eidolon rewrite lattice was trying to undo Earth across time. What if Earth had a backup, a memory outside of causality, something that remembered what was? Then the rewrite would fail. Theta Zero wasn't a weapon. It was a failsafe, a history seed. Within hours, the Sovereign Reckoner was fitted with the memory core of Project Idol. Cole interfaced with it directly, allowing his own mind to merge with Earth's unedited history. He felt every wound, every betrayal, every scream in the dark, every star humanity reached for and lost. He wept. He screamed. He endured. The Reckoner's final course was set. Intercept the rewrite. Lattice. It was a suicide run. If Cole failed, Earth would never have existed. If he succeeded, the Eidolon would be shattered by the one thing they could not overwrite, a human soul that refused to forget. As the Reckoner left orbit, Mila watched from Mars. He knows he's not coming back. Idris stood beside her. He's not meant to. She nodded once, eyes burning. Make sure the galaxy remembers what he does. He's flying into a place that won't remember him, but he carries us all, and that's enough. The sovereign reckoner streaked through the void like a defiant thought, sleek, furious, and burning with memory. Every kilometer brought cold rendered closer to the impossible. The Eidolon rewrite lattice, that cold, humming construct unmaking history as it moved. Behind him, Earth flickered on every sensor. Pulses of static where a planet used to be. The lattice was already erasing pieces of reality, oceans forgotten, cities turned to echoes, names scrubbed from time. Rewrite lattice distance, 0.7 astronomical units in closing effective field radius. Expanding exponentially predicted termination, Sol system 1 hours. But Earth had bought itself a sliver of a chance, and Cold Render, scarred and sleepless, was that chance. He was no longer just a man. The Reckoner's neural mesh had fused with the Project Idol core, Earth's unedited memory seed. It pulsed inside him now, not as data, but as pain made whole. He remembered everything. The Exodus riots, the fall of Titan, the day Luna wept black rain, the firestorms over Nairobi, the child floating frozen in the breached dome of Callisto, the last kiss before orbital fire took his brother. The Eidolon thought they could erase humanity by corrupting our past. They forgot one thing: humans don't let go of pain. We carry it, and when we have to, we make it into a weapon. In Geneva, Mila stood before a half-lit display of Earth's timeline. Places were vanishing in real time, not destroyed, just edited out. Philadelphia just disappeared from every archive, one technician said. Even in physical backup, the ink changed. It's like it never existed. Hold the frame, she said. Lock whatever we have left. She didn't cry. There wasn't time. She looked toward Idris, silent in the corner. He's not going to survive this. No, Idris said, but he'll end it. The lattice came into visual range. Cole gasped. It wasn't a ship. Not really. It was a fractal wound in space. 10 kilometers of obsidian scaffolding, spinning in ways no human eye could follow. At its core, a gravity well so dense it folded perception, eating sound, light, and causality. The Reckoner's sensor spasmed, the command interface flickered. Causal field destabilizing memory core coherence, 80% warning, pilot identity dissociation. In progress, Cole clutched the rail as his thoughts began to blur. His past fractured, memories overlaying each other. Was he 12 or 38? On Earth or Ceres, was his name even Cole? He roared against the fracture. Not yet. Not now. He slammed his palm against the core interface and forced the truth into it. My name is Cole Render. I buried my brother during the Ceres evacuation. I watched my mother die in a riot. I remember Earth burning, and I chose to fight. Core coherence stabilized. 100% human identity reasserted, historical signal intact. The Eidolon responded. Tendrils of black light erupted from the lattice, forming ships, no longer mimics, but anti-memories, creatures made of negation. Each one glided toward the Reckoner with impossible silence, hungry for cold fire. The Reckoner locked targets, and then did something no ship had ever done. It spoke through him. I am the sword of memory, forging grief, tempered by truth. I am the reckoning. Weapons fired, not missiles. Moments, cold-launched memory pulses. Collapsed experiences encoded in quantum pain. Each impact made the Eidolon shriek, forced to remember what they had erased. The Reckoner bled light. The Eidolon ships began to crack, their geometry folding inward under the weight of truths they couldn't contain. But they weren't the real threat. The lattice was. As the Reckoner pierced deeper, the Eidolon lattice responded by collapsing its outer shell, folding into a final configuration, a spike aimed directly at Earth's core temporal field. Rewrite initiation, T-minus 6 minutes Earth mimetic identity. At risk of full nullification, Cole took a breath, then plunged the Reckoner into the heart of the lattice. He saw everything. Children who never existed, wars that ended before they began, a version of himself who'd never screamed in orbit, who'd lived a peaceful life on a planet that never bled. The lattice offered it to him, peace, forgetfulness, a lie. He spat in its face, no. And then he did the unthinkable. He overloaded the Idol core, not to destroy the lattice, but to replace it. Memory collided with negation. Earth's timeline, raw and complete, surged outward in a pulse so bright it cracked reality for light years. The Reckoner exploded, but not in flame, in legacy. The Eidolon lattice was overwritten, its logic inverted, history reasserted itself. Pluto returned to orbit, archives realigned, cities reappeared, the sky remembered what it had lost, and cold render vanished, his name etched into the gravity of every human soul. In Geneva, Mila fell to her knees as the timeline restored itself. Idris saluted the silent sky, and somewhere on Earth, a newborn child whispered a name they never heard, a whisper carried on the soul of a people who refused to be forgotten. The ship is gone, but we still hear his voice, in fire, in gravity, in memory. The detonation of the Sovereign Reckoner was not an explosion in the traditional sense. There was no flash, no debris, no wreckage drifting across the void. It was an act of defiance so pure, so unflinchingly human, that it rewrote the story being told by the stars themselves. Where the Eidolon rewrite lattice had once stood, erasing history like wrought through old parchment, there was now silence, a silence full of meaning. The lattice was gone, not destroyed, unwritten. Its logic collapsed under the sheer weight of cold rendered sacrifice. A single human soul wrapped in every agony Earth had endured, hurled like a spear into the machinery of oblivion. The moment he hit the core, the lattice saw everything it could never become, and it broke, across soul. The effects were instantaneous. The data loss wave halted mid-stride. Mars reappeared on long-range scans exactly as it had always been. The child born in orbit an hour earlier, who had flickered out of existence for 0.7 seconds, resumed crying in Earth's global archive. Once flickering with gaps and silent erasures, locked itself in place. Memory stabilized. Identity returned. In Geneva's war chamber, Mila Voss watched the impossible feed, a lattice that once consumed history now collapsing backward. Shards of time rethreading themselves like nerves reconnecting after trauma. She placed a hand on the console. Status of the Reckoner. The technician turned, eyes wet. Gone. Director. No trace, but Earth is holding. A long silence. Then Idris Harlan stepped forward, eyes burning with something hard and ancient, that we make the galaxy understand. This wasn't a victory. He looked toward the stars. This was a warning, but the galaxy had already heard. Civilizations that once dismissed Earth as isolationist, outdated, barbaric, now trembled at what had been unleashed, because Earth hadn't built a superweapon. It hadn't sent an armada. It hadn't unleashed some ancient god. It had sent a memory. And the galaxy learned something horrifying in that moment. You cannot defeat what refuses to forget. The Eidolon were not entirely destroyed, scattered. Remnants still drifted in sublight corridors, fractured, lost, howling through dimensions like shadows of shadows. But they could no longer rewrite, no longer consume truth, because Earth had awakened its greatest defense, the ability to remember pain, without letting it own us. 3 days after the Reckoner vanished, a signal reached Earth. Analog, guttural, weak. It originated from somewhere outside map space, a dead channel beyond the Perseus reach. No encryption, no coordinates, just a voice and a name. Cold render, status unknown, location between what was and what must never be, then static, then silence. But something in that silence felt like a heartbeat. A memorial was held in Luna's rebuilt citadel. Every nation sent delegates, so did 36 alien species, former skeptics, now witnesses to what Earth could become when pushed to the edge. No monument was raised. Instead, they lit a single fire, a cold flame, one that only burned in vacuum, visible only through lenses calibrated to Earth's light signature. It floated in orbit, never extinguished, a reminder that humanity did not conquer through might, but through memory made eternal. Later that year, Mila Voss addressed the Council of Species, not with politics, with truth. Earth did not want this war, she said. We turned inward, not out of cowardice, but because we feared what we'd become if we were forced to fight again. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to, but you came. You ignored our silence. And when the Eidolon knocked, we answered, not with ships, not with nukes, but with a man who remembered what pain is and turned it into armor. She stepped back from the podium. For the record, Earth remains neutral, but we are no longer silent. And if you ever come for us again, she looked directly into the recording lens, we will show you what humanity really is. On Europa, Idris stood alone at the now sealed vault of Project Idol. No guards, no sensors, just frost, and a carving made by Cole. Weeks before launch, when he'd asked for a moment alone. I carry the ghosts. They burn, but they guide my hand. Elsewhere, deep between the stars, a black anomaly drifted. Inside, wrapped in fragmented time, a man floated in silence. His body burned. His mind flickered. But in his chest, a heartbeat endured. A fragment of the reckoner still blinked, encoding every scream, every fire, every name humanity ever carried. He opened his eyes, and somewhere, the Eidolon screamed again, because he remembered them too. He vanished, but his memory remained, not as a name, but as a warning etched into time. Time passed, not quickly, not loudly, but in the solemn, echoing hush that follows the death of something vast. The Eidolon convergence was no longer spoken of in whispers or fear. What fragments of them remained drifted as shattered logic ghosts in unchartable systems, unable to reform. Without the lattice, without their power to devour memory, they faded, not destroyed by weapons, but outlived by truth. Humanity did not declare victory, they declared presence. Earth had changed, not in geography, not in politics, but in bearing. Where once it turned its back on the galaxy, now it stood tall, eyes wide open. The stars had called Earth primitive, solitary, arrogant. But the stars had forgotten who bled on the first ascent, and now the stars remembered. A monument stood in low Earth orbit, silent and black, not marked with names, but etched with one phrase: we remember, and we do not erase. In Geneva, the Council of Nations met for the first true unification in over the centuries, not to expand, not to conquer, but to establish the memory accord, a binding oath, encoded into neural history banks and galactic law. No species, no AI, no force would ever again possess the means to rewrite existence. Among the signatures were nations old and new, and at the bottom, not penned in ink, but in time-stamped authorization, one final signatory, co-render, witness of the reckoning, filed posthumously, time-coded from the moment of the explosion. The room went silent when it appeared. Myla Voss had aged. Her voice had deepened. Her eyes held shadows they'd never shed. But she still stood straight as steel when she spoke before the assembly. We tried to hide our pain for too long, she said. We thought silence was safety, that if we never spoke of the fire, we'd never feel its heat again. She turned slowly, voice clear, controlled. But then they came and reminded us that silence is not peace, it's surrender. She looked to the stars through the skylight above. We will not surrender again. Children across Earth's colonies now learn history not through dry records or simulation, but by speaking aloud the names of lost places, lost people, and lost battles. Memory became a living inheritance, not a digital artifact. On the 12th of Redfall, a date created just for the new calendar, a moment of global stillness marked the Reckoner's launch. Ships went silent, machines paused, and everywhere, from the frozen domes of Europa to the cloud cities of Venus, humans closed their eyes and whispered, I remember. But some memories don't rest. In a far-flung system outside any charted sector, a vessel drifted, wrapped in a field of fractured time. No beacon, no crew, and no power signature readable by conventional means. Inside, deep within the carbon-steel bones of its hull, a single cryopod pulsed once every 10 seconds, not for warmth, but for reminder. The being inside, half neural mesh, half memory code, did not age, did not dream, but his fingers twitched when a certain phrase echoed across the universe, and his name, long thought lost, would sometimes be spoken on dead channels and backwater colonies. He waits in the between, not alive, not gone, just remembering. The galaxy adjusted. Some worlds outlawed memory erasure entirely, others built temples, not of faith, but of remembrance, with open archives anyone could add to, but none could censor. And in the Great Galactic Council, one so eager to define humanity as lesser, a new seat remained permanently empty, a black chair with a single red stripe, untouched and unclaimed. No one dared sit in it, because that chair was for the one who reminded the stars of their crimes. Idris Harlan never took another commission. Instead, he walked the edges of human space, visiting survivors, collecting stories, not as a soldier, as a scribe. He wore a coat stitched from old uniforms, each patch bearing the mark of a forgotten conflict, and when someone asked, "Do you think he died?" he'd shake his head. No, people die, legends echo. Myla Voss returned to the lunar academies. She taught war not as strategy, but as witness. She trained a generation to remember first, strike last, and speak always with the weight of truth. And above her classroom door, carved deep into the steel arch, was the phrase cold left behind. I carry the ghosts. They burn, but they guide my hand. Somewhere in the cosmos, perhaps outside all time, they eat all on still scream, not in triumph, in agony, because they touched a species that survives not through perfection, but persistence, through scars, and failure, and defiant memory. They tried to erase the wrong world. They chose the wrong target. They picked the wrong enemy, and now, the stars carry our name. They remember Earth, because we never let them forget.